Cheers, Guzzlers. Curry night. So you've got to have a beer with it, haven't you? So, we're going to make our curry. Well, of course, we always make everything, don't we? But then you might look over there and think, can I see some brown sauce? Tin of tomato soup? New potatoes in a tin? And then some things that you might expect to see, like onions and various other things. Because this is a little bit different. This is another one of Nadiya's from a spice book, a latest spice book. And this is her version of a Saag Aloo chicken Jalfrezi. First thing we need is some cooked chicken. Now, in Nadiya's book, she just says use cooked chicken. That is my first beer. That's all I've had. That's probably why I can't get my words out. I haven't had enough beer. Although I've got tiny rebel shoes and I've got tiny rebel glasses, it's not tiny rebel. Because the tiny rebel I've got is Stay Puffed. And I thought it was a bit early. Woo, 110. So this is Nadiya's version of it. And in a way, by using pre-cooked chicken, she's actually in keeping with what a British Jalfrezi actually is, because it's generally using sort of leftovers. So I think she might even say in a TV programme, I don't know if she says it in the book, but like, you know, like you've had your chicken and what's left over you can make your Jalfrezi with. But we're gonna start with just some chicken breasts, and as usual we're using Tesco's free breasted chickens. So I've got 3 chicken breasts there. Good, you have to do your bugger. And what I'm going to do is just put a bit of oil into this pan. I'm going to put it on my back burner so it don't block me view. Actually, I'll put a bit more than that in there. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to put that on, not that one, you silly bastard, that one. And then we're just going to cook that chicken through. Now, you can't, I suppose you might be going to get away with raw chicken in this. Excuse me, that's beer talking. But essentially, you're warming everything through. You do have it piping hot, and it would be essential that even when you put cooked chicken in there, you make sure it's brought up to be piping hot. But it's not like you normally do. So we're going to cook it. So I'm just going to lay that in that pan, and we're going to cook that through. Okay, and then while that's cooking we can at least start preparing the other bits, and I can tell you why I've got that weird collection of stuff there and how we're going to use it, and also a little bit about Saag Aloo, a chicken Jalfrezi, and for what it's worth a little bit about Nadiya. Oh, I was going to pick my beer up with my chicken hand. Can't do that. That's the chicken on in there. Keep an eye on it. I'll keep turning it. I don't want to brown it, although I might have to move that onto that front burner because that is a little bit fierce of that back burner. But we'll keep an eye on it. So it's actually 2 things: Saag Aloo, which is like a vegetable dish, but it's combined in this case to the Jalfrezi, and it's going to be a chicken Jalfrezi. Okay, so I'm going to start by getting 2 red onions. I'm just going to peel them, and then we're going to quarter them. Okay, we're not slicing them up as such. We're just going to quarter them and put to one side for now. Okay. Now, she's created this Jalfrezi to make it like easy, using genuinely ingredients that you're going to have in the house. So, for instance, tin of tomato soup. And that's to replace like using actual tomatoes, as it were. even though tomato soup is actual tomato. But also the potatoes, okay, just to save you a bit of time, get some tinned potatoes out and use them. But probably the key ingredient is her spice mix. Now her book is about 9 different spices. Well, actually it's about 8. Her 9th spice is this masala, which is a blend of the other 8. And she says what she's, I mean, I'm using garam masala, which again is actually Rick Stein's blend that I created from his book on India. Her one she refers to as art masala, where art actually means 8. So hers is 8 spices. I'm not quite sure what a garam is, but it's so many spices. So it's very similar. Okay, so you've got that spice mix, and then the other thing you'll want is some dried chillies. Take it a bit lower then, but get some more. Okay. But for the saag aloo, we're going to want some greens. In this case, we're using baby spinach. We're also going to use some garlic, and then to just dress the final thing, a couple of spring onions and some coriander. Got what that in there. Before I do anything more out with the onions and everything, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to turn that chicken. Okay, it's starting to brown on that side. Okay, I need to keep an eye on it. Like I say, that back burner is a little bit on the fierce side. Can't turn it down anymore. So, just going to quarter them onions and put them in there just to get them out of the way for now. Them little bits in there, don't want to waste anything, do we? Now, next thing is we want some garlic. Broke me bloody nail, it went down really low. Right, I'm trying to pull that garlic apart. Oh, I'm so delicate, mate, so delicate. We're going to put some garlic in it. We're not going to crush it, we're just going to slice it. And how much did she use? About 4 cloves of garlic. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just going to get them peeled, and then we'll just thinly slice that. So I'm saying to you, it's 2 dishes. Saag aloo. Now, saag or sag comes from the Punjab region, and it's basically a leafy vegetable dish. Okay, it could be made with spinach, mustard greens, American collard greens, whatever they are, broccoli even. Okay, but it would possibly be more traditional to use something like mustard greens. Okay, but it doesn't matter. And then, oops, try to take his fingers off. Probably should have been better with a smaller knife with the garlic, shouldn't I? And it is actually one of the most important dishes in the Bengali cuisine, if you like, and almost all sort of Bengalese would traditionally have something like a saag at lunchtime. So that's the saag. What's for you, Lou? I don't know, but I'm just going to get this garlic chopped, and then I'll tell you about the loo bit. Okay, actually what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm not going to chop it, I'm just going to peel it, and we'll just set that to one side. do my spring onions, and so what we're going to do with them is just going to remove the old outer bits, and then we're just going to thinly slice these. And like I say, these go on at the end. Okay, we're going to dress it now. The Jalfrezi is normally served with some sort of bread, like a roti or naan. We're going to use actually chapatis. In some regions they also serve it with rice, but we're not being a bit, well, it's not me being a bit more healthy, but we're not using rice. So I'll tell you about the saag. The word saag or saag comes from a Sanskrit word meaning leafy vegetables, hence the reason you're using leafy vegetables. Now, this isn't just leafy vegetables. This is going to have potatoes in it. And this is a Saag Aloo because it's a saag with potatoes. And the word is a North Indian Pakistani word for potatoes is, guess what? Aloo. So that's what your Saag Aloo is. It's basically leafy vegetables with potatoes. Hence the reason this ends up with them tins of potatoes. Now I've got 2 small tins there. In her recipe she's talking about 400 grams, I think it is. Or it might be 460 gram tin. For some reason couldn't get them in Tesco, so we ended up with 2 small ones. I've left that lid off a little bit because, as usual, the chickens have a lot of moisture in. And actually, I discovered something about the moisture chickens. And a long time ago, doing one of these, I said, I didn't realise, I thought it was a deliberate act. And I said, I found out, apparently it's not a deliberate act, it's part of the chilling process. Is it bollocks? It's deliberate. I've now since found out it's a deliberate act. They literally do pump them full of water, sometimes increasing the weight by 30%. So I take back everything I said in an earlier video where I said, oh, I was really wrong there. This is just part of the way we chill things, and it just absorbs the water. Bollocks. They inject it with water. They do it with other meat as well. It's a deliberate act to bulk it up so it weighs more. They go, oh, it keeps it moist. Does it? It means you've got less meat for your money. And it's not just Tesco's, they all do it. Right, so that's that sort of prepared. Next thing while we're at it is we're going to take a handful of coriander, and I'm just going to chop that up fairly roughly, and we'll put that to one side. So I've turned my chicken one more time, okay, I think we're getting there now. And all I'm going to do now is I've just got about 100 grams approximately of baby spinach, and I'm just going to take the stalks off, and we'll set that to one side. Now, this goes in quite near the end. You essentially just wilt it in there, and then it's good to go. So, the Saag Aloo I told you about. Before we get to the old chicken Jalfrezi, you know, I've mentioned Nadiya before, probably most of you know what I'm talking about. But Nadiya was just an ordinary housewife. That's what she says anyway. Until in 2015 she was in the Great British Bake Off and won it. I think it was the 6th series, I think. And really from then she's become a household name. But one of the big things was the fact that Nadiya was a 2nd generation British Bangladeshi and Muslim, and her taking part in the Great British Bake Off and winning it not only sort of raised awareness of, you know, diversity, you know, things like that, but also raised the profile of sort of Muslim and Muslim women, and she's gone on to have, you know, a quite lucrative career in TV. And so, like I said, I've got 2 of her books. Actually, she signed one of them. I didn't actually get to meet her. That was my sister and my mother. Went to a book signing where she was there and got her to do a signing for me. But this is her latest book, which I think I mentioned before, my Badam cheesecake, which I think might come out just before this one does, actually. I've already done that one. I did that one ages ago. I did that one before Christmas. But I think that's due to come out next week or so. So I mentioned the book in there, and this is just yet another one of her dishes. Also, I made a brown dal from her dish, and I think that one's been out already. But anyway, that's just a little bit about Nadiya at the minute. So I'm just going to finish off de-stalking that spinach, and then hopefully by then we can then take that chicken out of there, set it to one side, and we can start cooking the Jalfrezi. Oh, what's a Jalfrezi? I've removed the chicken. I'm not going to clean that out because obviously we've got sort of remains of the chicken juices as such in there, which will add to the flavour. But I'm going to add a little bit more oil. And the next thing I'm going to do is get that up nice and hot again. I'll move it to my front burner because I get a bit more control over the heat with that. So that back one can be a bit vicious. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, now these are getting a bit tired. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got about 6 dried chillies there. And when that gets up to heat, we're going to chuck them in there, and we're just going to sort of fry them until they start swelling up. And then we're going to need to have our garlic ready. So what I need to do while I'm waiting for that is thinly slice my garlic. So I'll tell you about Nadiya. She went on to win the Great British Bake Off. I think she did 16 in the final, 16 iced buns, a like a multi-layered presentation cake at the end, based on my what should you call it, my big fat British wedding. And she also made a mille-feuille, which I believe was rather chinkly, from Paul Hollywood's own recipe. And like I say, she went on to win, and then since then she's been on a variety of TV shows, not just cooking shows. Okay, she's quite outspoken. She's quite honest about the fact that she suffers from panic attacks and things like that. And she does actually suffer from an awful lot of abuse as well, which is unfortunate, like the world we live in today, isn't it? There's plenty of arseholes out there. She basically is a self-taught cook. She said that she learnt basic cooking skills at school, like, I was going to say like a lot of girls do today, but nowadays they do actually get the boys doing it as well. In my day at school, the boys did woodwork or metalwork, girls did home economics. Right, that's starting to come up to heat, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put them in there, and then we're just going to sort of get them coated in that oil, and then like I say, what we want to do is just fry them until they start to swell up. The garlic's all ready to go. I might actually just add, I know I shouldn't do it because it's got hot now, I'm just going to add a little bit more oil. So we've got our garam masala, and then we've got our tinned ingredients and our brown sauce, although actually I'm using barbecue sauce. I thought it wasn't worth getting a thing of brown sauce when it's essentially the same thing. That's a bit sort of sweeter and tangier and such. So yeah, so Nadiya, actually she got picked to make a cake for when it was Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth II's 90th birthday. She was asked to bake her a cake. She made an orange drizzle cake with orange curd and orange buttercream. And obviously this was all meant to be a little bit hush-hush at the time. But when she finally told her kids, her boys were like, oh, that's cool, mum. And when she told her daughter was a bit nonplussed. It was like, well, so you're making one for Mary Berry? When she said, I'm making a cake for the Queen, for the Queen's birthday, she said, so what, you're making a cake for Mary Berry? You've made lots of cakes for Mary Berry. I don't think she quite understood. I don't know how old she was at the time. She was made a member of the Order of the British Empire, an MBE, in 2020. Was it 2020? Yeah, 2020, in the New Year's Honours list. And that was in recognition of what she's done for broadcasting and the culinary arts. Like I say, she suffered things like panic attacks and anxiety and that. And after she won the Great British Bake Off, she said, I'm never going to put boundaries on myself ever again. I'm never going to say I can't do it. I'm never going to say maybe. I'm never going to say I don't think I can. I can and I will. And that ought to really be a mantra for everybody, shouldn't it? So, we'll just let these swell a little bit. As told you about Nadiya, told you about Saag Aloo, still got to tell you about Jalfrezi. Not there's an awful lot to tell you. So I've got to drag it out a bit. Ooh, that was a bit warm. Caught the edge of the pan there. So these are starting to get a little bit softer, but my glass is starting to get empty. They have swollen up a little bit. Doesn't seem to be getting very hot. But there you go. Well, I'm not putting my hand in there because it's bloody hot oil. But they are starting to swell a bit. So at this point, we're going to put in that garlic, and now we want to carry on frying that. But I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, okay, down to about a medium, and we want to cook that until that garlic starts to brown. Oh, pardon me. So I'm doing this in my sort of like, I don't know what you call it, pan really. You could do it in a wok, or you can do it in a large frying pan. Some of this garlic's going brown, but I think that's because it's picking up some of the, like the brown bits from where the chicken was. But it is essentially a stir-fry dish. It is influenced by Chinese culture, Chinese cuisine, should I say. So a Jalfrezi is basically a stir-fry curry dish, which originated from Bengal. And the word Jalfrezi is actually a two-part word, Jalfrezi or whatever, which means essentially hot fry, because that's what we're doing. We're frying things hot. You wouldn't fry things cold, would you? Well, definitely. And it can be meat-based, fish-based, paneer, cheese-based, or vegetable-based. But it's generally it's a stir-fried dish with like a thick, spicy sauce, which is what we're going to be creating. In this case, using tomato soup and the other stuff we're putting in there. And other common ingredients. And now this is in her recipe, but we're not using it, is bell peppers, as we would call them. She uses 2 red ones, cut into large chunks. We're not putting them in. But traditionally it's them, tomatoes. We use tomato soup because that's what she uses. But you would use tomatoes and onion, and we are obviously using the onion. And actually we're not frying the onion off like we are the garlic at this stage. We're doing that later. Now I'm just going to turn that heat down a bit more, and this is where we're now going to add the remaining ingredients. So I want 1.5 teaspoons of salt, I want the garam masala, or art masala if you're using her blend, which you can get from her book. 4 tablespoons of that. 1, 2, 3. Can't get the last bit out. 4. In that goes. Let me get rid of that out of the way for now. Got fall for there in a minute. Brown sauce. 4 tablespoons of that. 1, sort of. 2. I mean, this in a way is adding sort of a bit of an acidic thing, but also, if I put 3 or 4 in, I can't remember now. I'll put a bit more in because I'm not sure. But also some spices from that. Okay, that's gone in there. Let me get rid of that for a minute. And then, cook that me now. And then we're going to add in that cream of tomato soup. Now, she said, oh, they've got a tin of Heinz. I said, just buy fucking hell, I can't say bloody word now. The cheap tin of tomato soup. Wow, Heinz is much nicer. I said, it's going in a bloody curry. You won't tell the bloody dip. No, I've got that Heinz. I said, well, you're paying. Do what you like, I don't care. Right, so we've almost got all our ingredients in it, so now I'm just going to mix that in, and then once that's all sort of mixed together, we're just going to leave that on the heat. And I mean, it's fairly thick, but we want it thicker than that. We're going to just turn the heat up a little bit at this stage. We essentially want to reduce that by half to make a nice thick sauce, like I say, a thick spicy sauce. That's annoying, isn't it, that knocking noise? Shut up! Oh, how that handles up. So much of them silicone rubber. Now, just a little bit more about Jalfrezi while we're waiting on that to come up to heat. In British recipe books, essentially, like, because a lot of Indian, we've said this before, a lot of Indian dishes that we get in England are invented. They're not actually Indian. There's some that are obviously based on Indian dishes, and there are some nowadays Indian restaurants that do make Indian dishes, but some of the more traditional, you know, give me a vindaloo or whatever, they're complete British inventions. And the recipe, so this isn't, well, this is one, obviously is, but you know, a Jalfrezi is an Indian dish, but the versions you often see in the cookbooks in England, move over there, you annoy me, often you talk about using leftovers, i.e. like leftover chicken. It's always fried, stir fried, and in 2011 Jalfrezi was rated the most popular dish in UK Indian and Southern Asian restaurants. There you go. That's your history lesson over with. Told you about Saag Aloo, told you about Jalfrezi, told you about Nadiya, whose recipe this is. So this is now just a matter of letting this come up, boil away and reduce by half. So time to have a little bit of a tidy up, and then I'm going to tell you about Kingfisher beer, which I think I've already told you about, but I'm telling you again. Right, I've taken the lids off on my tins of potatoes and I've drained them. We're not putting the liquid in, so they're ready to go. Now we're doing Indian, and you might have noticed, although I did sort of hide it a little bit, this is actually Spanish beer. More often than not, I mean, I know you get your, I was going to say your standard British beers. They're not really British beers, but they're ones that us Brits are perhaps more accustomed to seeing in pubs and that. But some Indian restaurants, many years ago, 40 odd years ago, show me age, used to sometimes serve an Indian beer and Kingfisher. I think I've told you this story before. I'll tell you again. It was a long time ago, but I did. And I don't care. Killing time in a minute. I'm waiting for this to reduce down. Other than chopping up your chicken and scratching my nose. Not much else at the moment. So Kingfisher Lager had to be imported from India. Now back then, 40 odd years ago, the beer duty and things like that, and delivery charges, you know, shipping it all the way across from India, meant that beer was going to be expensive. Now, things have all changed now, and now it isn't like that anymore, but back then it was. And I was working as, basically I was running the quality control lab of a local, Britain's oldest brewery. Not to mention names, perhaps I might get in trouble, I don't know. Well, I don't know why I'll get in trouble, but Britain's oldest brewery. And I was running the quality control lab, and we got approached to say that they wanted to launch Kingfisher Lager, mainly for the Indian restaurants, but also for any other markets that would want to buy it. And so what they were doing was looking at existing lagers and saying, well, actually, this isn't far different. Actually, really, all they do is come down to the price. There you go. They were looking for something that closely matched the flavour profile of the Indian Kingfisher Lager. I'm going to turn that down a fraction. And they had got hop oils. Now, if you know anything about brewing beer, modern beer, because back in like Henry VIII's time, well, prior to Henry VIII, hops didn't go in beer. Hops serve several functions, one of which actually helps preserve it a bit, but it also adds flavour. And now in your traditional British brewery, particularly things like your real ales, hops are added at 2 different stages. One, they're added near the beginning of the process, and what we call the hop oils, which is the oils that are in the hop flour, they basically all boil off. So you lose them. So traditionally in cask ale and that, you re-hopped at a later stage after you've done all the heating, so that you could extract those hop oils and they didn't escape. So what Kingfisher had done was extracted the hop oils, and they said what we can do then is, these are using the hops that we would use traditionally in Kingfisher Lager in India. We'll take your base lager, Britain's oldest brewery, and we want you to set up a series of tastings using different amounts of these hop oils to try and match, where possible, as close as possible, the flavour of Kingfisher. So, although obviously the final decision wasn't mine, I was the one who had to set up all the sort of the different taste trials, and then we all sat around and we all had to drink this beer. I'll tell you, it's our job running a quality control lab in the brewery. Although today you're not allowed to drink it. Most breweries now dry. But it came down to 2 different breweries. The brewery I work for and another major brewery. And they decided that ours was the closest match. Like I say, it was all down to money. But no, of course, our flavour profile was better. So they picked one of the flavour profiles that versions I'd done, and that was then launched as a British brewed Kingfisher. Nowadays it's all imported in from India, so the Kingfisher you see today is genuine Kingfisher brewery. Probably not even brewed in India anymore. Like all these breweries, they all go just buy each other out, they move them around. I work for the Cream of Manchester brewery, and they decided to move the production of that out of Manchester. Big fuss about that. How can you have the cream of Manchester not brewed in bloody Manchester? Brewery don't exist anymore. Prison next door is still there. Little hint as to what that brewery was, if you know your beers. Right, so literally just waiting on that to thicken up a little bit more, and then we'll start assembling the final Jalfrezi. Oh, go on the floor, why don't you? I only just cleaned it today. So now I'm just going to put the onion in. So like I said, the onion isn't like fried up like it is normally, you know, softened up, but we are going to cook it in the sauce for a little bit. Hopefully it will also break apart a little bit more once we get it going. I'm going to tip the, don't you dare splash everything, you shite. And go more on the floor, why don't you? I'm also going to tip them potatoes in there, like I say, drain them. Like I say, she was using about 560 gram tin. I couldn't get them there, so that's 600 grams. So just going to sort of mix that through. He says try not to splash it over the cooker and also over his shirt, because it's clean. And she'll be going, I'm trying to just clean it, got it all over that shirt. Okay, so obviously we're going to want to cook, you know, warm those potatoes and everything else up and cook them potatoes a bit. And so, but you can already see that is really nice thick coat and everything. And now I'm just going to take that chicken and we're just going to cut that up into chunks. You can see it is cooked through. And again, we're just going to toss that once we've got all that chicken in there. She uses about 200 grams. I just said to the wife, get a pack of chicken breasts, but you know, it'll have to be the 3-breasted chicken because that's all Tesco seem to do. I think you can buy 1-breasted chickens, but you can't get 2-breasted chickens apparently. They're either 1 or 3. Again, a marketing con in it to end up paying more than you actually really need. I know you could say, well, I can always keep one for later, but who does, eh? So that is apart from adding in the spinach at the very end. I saw that splash. That is everything we want. Now we just want to cook this through. Now in this case, if you're using leftover chicken, you want to make sure, it's not quite so critical with this because we've only just cooked it, but obviously we want to heat them potatoes up as well. But you'd want to make sure everything's piping hot, that chicken is all nicely returned, you know, to a nice high heat. But equally we want to warm them potatoes through. We want to cook them onions a little bit. So that's going to go there on that lowish heat. You can see there's not an awful lot of spare sauce. If it's getting a bit too dry, you can always add a little bit of water if you wanted to. But I think we'll leave it like that. So I'm just going to let that cook through. Have a little clean up here. Then we'll be ready to try it. Now I did actually try a little taste of that sauce, and it's not actually got an awful lot of chilli hit to it, which surprises me because the garam masala has a bit of chilli powder in it. And also I've got to get that onion off the clean floor. Right, that's been cooking through. Now what's that camera doing? Get back there, you little shite. What? Pardon me. So, as I was saying, that's nicely heated through. I have added a little bit of water because it was quite dry and I thought I'm not really going to get that onion and potato cooked. Now, I should have pointed out, I tipped them straight out the tin. They were small potatoes. If you're using a bigger tin, sometimes the sizes do change quite a lot. And so, in which case, you know, these, if you look at these, are also fairly even size. But you could halve them if you want, or even if they're too big, quarter them. Okay, so I'm going to turn that heat now really low, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to put that spinach in there with the idea that we just want to wilt them. So there's the saag bit. The aloo's in there, the potatoes, chicken jalfrezi is the rest of it. All we're doing essentially is using the jalfrezi sauce to create the saag, or the Saag Aloo. Okay, 2 meals in one. Saag Aloo, chicken jalfrezi, 2 meals in one. So if your heat is a bit more fierce than mine, you might want to turn your heat off and just let this naturally wilt through in the existing heat. But I'm just going to leave that heat on a little bit more, and then all you're going to need is obviously something to serve it into. I've got some big bowls there, which I forgot to warm through, so they're a bit cold because they've been outside in the conservatory, which isn't heated in our house. Not because I don't heat it, you can't heat it. And then I've got my spring onions and coriander, which once we've plated it up, as it were, we then just sprinkle that on top. And then in this case, I've got my chapatis ready to serve with it. Or better get a plate to put them on. So, just going to let that sort that, I was going to say spaghetti then, that spinach out. Gives me time to finish my beer. I might have to go on the wine. Could go on beer, I can't go on this beer because my wife only bought me 2 bottles. Nice thick sauce, big chunks of onion. We've got potatoes, and you've got chicken in there. So, don't spill me wine, I'll just open that. So, let's give this a little go. There's a potato, bit of spinach, bit of sauce. Obviously be careful of the chillies, you don't want to get eating them. Well, you can if you want, but I wouldn't. But I wouldn't say they've actually imparted an awful lot of heat to it. Probably eat them in a bit. So a bit of onion. Oh, that sauce is hot. Onion's still got a little bit of crunch to it, which is nice. The sauce is not earthy, quite woody. I think that's obviously the garam masala. Chicken is this. Really, it's a chicken, but you can taste, really all you're tasting is jalfrezi sauce. It's a little bit on the sweet side. Whether that's because I use barbecue sauce or not, I don't know. It is warm. Like I say, it's not a huge amount of heat coming off them chillies. I'm beginning to notice a little bit of it. Oh, I forgot. So, sprinkle on some, and then spring onions. Sprinkle on some fresh coriander. Have to know enough taste now, won't I? So, a bit of chicken. Oh, that wasn't that. It wasn't the heat of that one. That was because I'm trying to talk about it when I was swallowing them. Not a good idea. So there you go. From Nadiya's Simply Spice book. I think it's Simply Spice, but it's her latest book. That's a Saag Aloo chicken jalfrezi. Oh, there's a bit of heat coming from that one. Oh, we'll have to have some wine. Cheers.